Welcome to Scale with Clarity, the podcast for entrepreneurs who are building a business and a life that actually feels good. I'm Brooke Cunninger, fractional CFO, strategist, and mom of three, and I've learned that scaling isn't just about hitting revenue milestones. It's about finding alignment between your big vision and your everyday reality. Each week, you'll hear honest conversations with founders who are redefining success on their own terms. We'll talk about the pivots, the aha moments, and the tough decisions behind the scenes. Plus, the surprising ways entrepreneurship becomes the greatest personal growth journey of all. Whether you're dreaming of leaving corporate, navigating the messy middle, or trying to grow without burning out, this show is here to help you scale with more clarity, confidence, and ease. Because building a business should expand you, not deplete you. Let's scale with clarity together. Hi, Jennifer.
Hello, Brooke.
Thank you for being on the podcast. I'm so excited to have this conversation.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I love the energy and the conversations that you bring to the world. We need it.
Thank you. You too. And I have to, for everyone listening, so Jennifer and I are in a similar, we met through a program that we're both taking. So Jennifer is a business coach and has been so eye-opening to me in some of these calls we've been on as I'm trying to lean more into this journey. But we talked and I realized your background and history is so similar. And it's so inspiring kind of like how you've gotten to where you are too, that I was like, you have to be on this podcast because it's all about embracing the change, leaning into it, and all the lessons you've learned. So thank you for doing what you're doing and also being on this podcast.
Well, thank you for that. And I'm still learning, if that makes you feel any better.
It does, as we were
Never
just
ends.
100%. And we were just, before we pushed record, talking about that. And for everyone, like that is part of what I want this whole journey on my podcasting journey, because I think I had this view of like the happiness and fulfillment and like knowing would be on the other side of whatever change. Like I was corporate. If I left that, it would be there, or kids are young. As soon as they, get older or leave the house, it's there. And that's not it. And I don't say that to say, oh my gosh, it's never going to change, but just like putting that off, like you're always learning and evolving. And like, I think if we can sink into that, okay, which that's just how it kind of is, then we release that pressure of where is it? I got to keep searching and just find it in the now. So anyways.
And don't you feel like too, we probably miss a lot of the now?
Yes.
Because as humans, we're wired that way.
Yes.
And we're always looking, when your kids are little, when they're a little bit older, I'll have more free time.
Yes.
You're not going to have any more free time. It's just going to change. Your time's going to change. And I feel like one thing that I had a crazy, crazy year in 2023 in a great way.
Mm-hmm.
But real quick, I became a grandma.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I had a son graduate from high school. So there's all those senior things, and he was in a spring sport. So crazy, crazy busy. And then I had a daughter get married in June. So I had 3 life-changing, beautiful events happen to me in 2023. But talk about overwhelming. Like I used to joke that my life was Excel spreadsheets because I was organizing so much stuff. And at one point I said, okay, I'm going to head into this season and just be present. That was my mantra for the last year. Just embrace the messy middle, embrace the moment, and just live in it. And boy, that was so refreshing. And I, of course I kind of forgot that I was doing that and I need to get back to that. But that's just what we do. We're always like, okay, when this gets here, when that gets there, well, it never gets there.
Thank you for sharing that too, because I refer to like the wheel of life for those of you in life coaching or whatever, but there's all these aspects of your life. And I think wherever is kind of the hardest, sometimes it takes our focus, but these amazingly wonderful events you had too, in a positive way, took your focus and you realize like how good it could be. So we were just talking before we recorded about the business journey. And that's, at least for me, the last couple months have been that. But so then you lose sight on all these other aspects of like your life, because either they're easy or they're just like in flow, you've gotten them into a place. So you kind of focus on one aspect with losing sight of kind of these other pieces of the pie. And you're right, like that. You hear all the, what is it? The 5 regrets of the dying, or all these lessons of people that are kind of later in life. And like, that's the important thing. And thank you for sharing that, because actually last 2 nights ago, I was just alluding to this before we recorded too, but I had these quotes that I had taken from like when your kids are young, like quote a day or something. And it was when my oldest, who's now 13, he was like 5, and my middle he would have been 1. So it was like just their interactions. And I paused each day, and it's almost a forced reflection, where you're like in it. But I was like, okay, what crazy, funny thing did they make me laugh at today? Now, how many years, I'm doing the math, but like 8 years later or whatever, they were cracking up, and like it just was a reminder. And then I had none for my daughter because it just got too crazy. So I was just on autopilot so much, but it was one of those times. It was a reflection of like, you really do have to be in the moment too, because like also looking back, you're like, it was so good, but I've forgotten. It was crazy. And so like, just like a 5 minute or just like a check-in of like, you know what, there's some really funny in the craziness that's happening in
Right.
life too, you know?
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Anyways, so okay, so I thought when we were gonna chat, there's so many different ways. And if you're okay, I might just jump around a little bit in your story and pull, because I know you have a lot of lessons that we could pull out of you. So maybe to start, can you give us the today, like what your role is today? And I know you just said you have you have married daughter now, a grandchild, all these amazing things. So from a professional standpoint too, what you're focusing on today. And then I'd like to kind of go back to the start.
Yeah, absolutely. So I spent 20 years owning and operating my own brick and mortar cookie and cupcake business.
Love that.
It was a gifting company, really. It was very corporate focused. And I did that for over 20 years and pivoted it during a recession where I ended up creating a cupcake brand that went national. So when I look back at my journey of owning that business, the recession of 0809 was the best thing that ever happened to me. And I
But
probably,
in the moment, can I pause you there? How did it feel when it first? Yeah, yeah,
oh, scared, like fear, because
yeah.
people were losing their jobs. I had a lease. I had 10 employees. And business was drying up quickly because we had focused so heavily on corporate, which was great. That's what my success was. But that was obviously the first thing to go on a budget were those type of expenses. So that is when, one of my skill sets is I'm very visionary, I'm very innovative. And that was when cupcakes were becoming a trend. There was a show called Cupcake Wars that was getting launched on Food Network. And I said to my manager, we're going to launch cupcakes. There's nobody in our market doing it. And when I did that, it just brought a breath of fresh air into our business. It attracted new customers. I ended up franchising it. It literally saved my business and pivoted us. We ended up tripling our revenue past that.
That's amazing. Can I ask you, in that pivot, had you had this idea before, or was it out of kind of necessity that these vision, or like, what is the next step for us in this business? How did that idea come up for you? And I know you talked about the cupcake wars, but had you thought about it before, or?
No, I was comfortable. I had 3 children. I was working part-time for the most part.
Yeah.
I had a great manager. I had a great staff. I was comfortable. I honestly, I know for a fact, 100% that I would not have done that if my back wasn't up against the wall. So it was scarcity. It was also, I was 10 years into my journey of an entrepreneur, and there's so many life lessons and lessons you learn along the way. And I probably wasn't prepared financially as well as I could have been to weather any kind of a storm. So no, that came out of sheer necessity. And what's interesting about that is when I work with my clients today, one of our focuses is how can we boost your revenue without spending a lot of marketing dollars, right? And we look for ways to innovate. And I'm not saying you have to go out and create a whole new brand, because obviously that's a big lift. But why do we wait until our back's up against the wall to get creative with our own businesses and launch something or change something or improve something? So that's kind of one of my strategies when I work with clients today.
Is just, how can we innovate? How can we look at the next thing too? And I find a lot of, well, you tell me with the ones you work with too, but if a lot of entrepreneurs that I work with have a lot of ideas, but then you get pulled into the do. And so is it when you work with some clients, and I know a lot are brick and mortar or locally owned businesses, is a lot of it saying, allowing them to kind of lift their head up and see what's possible and step into some of that visionary, ideating and what's the next step for them?
It is. And you become like decision fatigue, you become analysis paralysis because you are in the weeds every day. You are the doer. So yes, you have all these ideas, and I call it shiny object syndrome or squirrel, where we go and we chase all these ideas. Well, what that does is that distracts you from growing the foundation and the bigger piece of your business. So yes, I help them take all these ideas. I bring in a big picture perspective that they can't see because they are in the weeds every day. and we put some data behind it. We put some strategy behind it. And then let's go pick one of those fun
I love that.
ideas
Mm-hmm.
and go after it in
Yeah.
a way that's not going to drain your resources, your time, your energy, your money, and actually grow your business.
I love
And
that.
it really just a lot of times it takes an outside perspective. I mean, none of us get anywhere
Yeah.
solo.
You know what? And I don't know if when you were running your own business too, if this, but I find I even now, I've just started investing in myself in this past year from a business perspective, and even being a business coach and working with others. But it's this shift of truly, because I think when I was in my corporate job, you naturally got it, or you figured I've checked the box with my education, so like that's all I need. But you were getting feedback all along the way. So but investing in yourself in that way, it's so huge. And a lot of the clients I work with, it's really having a just a partner that is like a sounding board too. Because so the initial kind of sometimes the pushback I get from clients is like, you don't know my business better than I do. I have like I've done it. I've been in the trenches here, but it's also having somebody that has, to your point, the big picture view and the fresh set of eyes that can say, well, I get it. I get where you're trying to go, and let's bounce some ideas off of too. Have you found that in like your businesses and like when you've worked with others? That's yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I always say I'm your second brain.
Yeah.
So yes, you know your business better than anybody, but I help you look at it with a different lens. I
Mm-hmm.
help you deep dive into the areas that we need to
Mm-hmm.
deep dive because also as a solo entrepreneur, or even if you have staff, you
Yeah.
get to pick and choose what you want to focus on.
Yeah.
That's a blessing and a curse. It's kind of like when my girlfriend and I go to the gym. And when we go to the gym, I always pick my favorite exercises. Well, I pick the ones I like and I pick the ones that
Yeah.
come easier to me. I don't
Yeah.
want to do the exercises that are harder. Well,
Yeah.
same with owning a business. And sometimes you just need someone to kind of journey with you
Yeah.
through those harder things. But
Mm-hmm.
then once you do, I just love when the clarity, the
Mm-hmm.
confidence, all of a sudden your revenue starts improving, your profits. There's nothing better than saving a business owner money where they can pay themselves more. Those are the rewards at the end of the day.
I totally agree. I just actually was writing about this yesterday, and I always talk about like ROI clearly is a key financial metric that would work with businesses, but I like to call it ROE and return on energy, because once you can clear off those things that are draining you, whether it's talking to someone through it or you're in a place to prioritize bringing on, outsourcing or automating, and now you're in your zone of genius and you can focus on those things that do bring you that energy. And like, then it's like a rocket ship taking off. And to your point, you can literally see it in people. Then they're like, this is why I got in this business. I remember it now, because you've just been bogged down in so much. And that is like the most fulfilling part of working with businesses when you have that change.
It really is. And you see the stress almost physically come off of them.
Yeah.
Because I think when you get bogged down in all of your ideas, even if it's positive, it's
Yeah.
stressful.
Yeah.
And you think about your business in the middle of the night and you either worry about it or you're excited about it. And then the next day you're not. And so it really, when you have that clarity that comes along
Yeah. Yeah.
with working with somebody and creating that roadmap, it just makes it so much easier and on so many levels. You even know where to market,
Right.
you even know where to talk, who to talk to and, say no to. Thank God, because that's exhausting too.
I mean, one of the biggest, I think about three different like mindset shifts for me leaving corporate into um, like entrepreneurial. Um, and one of them, so to your point, I think it's like decision fatigue, but what I like to like correlate it, we've heard of that before in your life, but you are making so many decisions, but none of them, at least for me, when I first made the jump, and still actually, I mean, it's been 3 years, is none of them are automatic where I can like move them to the back of my head and not think about them. And I would minimize that because for me, going from corporate to like, say you're used to like presenting to, 50, you have a huge team that you're managing and whatever that is, that's become kind of like less stressful for you because you've done it so much, but you've pivoted into this new world. So even when it's only 3 people you're managing, but it's in a different way and it's on your own vision and your mission, like all of that is new, and it takes that fatigue is like 10x what you would assume it would be. And so it was this shift for me to like kind of give myself a little bit of grace in that the 10,000 decisions you're making, they're all new. Like you've never made like those type before. And even if they're on a smaller scale, because you're still stretching your like comfort zone. And I don't know if that resonates with you too, but that feels like that's one of the biggest shifts for me, at least moving from. pre to post entrepreneurship.
Exactly. No, you hit it dead on.
So can we go back to before you started your bakery and the cupcake venture and all that? So you were in corporate before too. Is that
Yes,
right?
I did the typical path of went
Yeah.
to college, got a marketing degree, and I started and went to work for Kraft Foods, and I worked there for almost 10 years. I was in sales and marketing, absolutely loved it. Great company, great people, 401k with a
Hmm.
match, company car. I had all the perks, stovetop stuffing and Kraft
Yeah.
mac and cheese.
So
And
good. Kids
yeah,
yeah.
all the good stuff.
They're like, don't leave, mom. We gotta, yes.
Exactly. But back then, in order to promote in the sales and marketing role, you had to relocate. So my husband and I met in college and we got married. We spent a year in his hometown of Grand Rapids, which is where we are today. And I got promoted to Kansas City. So we moved to Kansas City. He started a new job. We were there literally 12 months. I got promoted to Chicago. We moved to Chicago. Well, then I had my first child.
Yeah.
And she was about 3, and we decided that this just wasn't the path for us.
Yeah.
And I think that's where, too, as women, we have to come together and just support each other's decisions. Some women need to work in corporate, thrive in that environment, and should stay in that environment.
Yep.
And it's not that I didn't love that environment. I just knew I didn't want to have to keep moving.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
I was a child, my father worked for Ford Motor Company in the Detroit area. And for whatever reason, my parents moved 4 times within the Detroit suburbs. So I went to 4 different schools before I was in
Yeah.
8th grade.
Yeah.
And, my husband stayed in the same home for 25, 30 years and knew he still hangs out with high school friends.
Yeah.
I can't even remember the name of a school I went to.
I'm the
So
same
for
as you.
me, it was a very personal
Yeah.
decision to leave corporate and do something that could be more family friendly, I guess
Yeah.
you could say.
Yeah.
So we decided to move back to Grand Rapids
Yeah.
because, he had a job that was traveling. So both people working full time, he's traveling and absolutely no village to help.
Yeah.
We were just like, what are we doing? So we moved back to Grand Rapids and I decided to start Cookies by Design, which is actually a franchise that I bought into. And I'm not a baker. I don't even enjoy
Oh.
baking.
So can you like drive me into that decision? So clearly your values are pulling you to make a different decision, but you're like, I know I want to was there ever a thought, let me just stay at home or let me do a part-time thing? Did you know, like, I'm going to do this entrepreneurial, like, how did that come about for you?
Well, what's interesting is when I was at Kraft Foods, I did go part time. I was actually, I job shared, and my job
Mm.
share partner and I were the first 2 women at Kraft in sales
Wow.
because job sharing and sales can be challenging because of
Yes.
your forward facing to your
Yes.
customer.
Yep.
So we had to really sell that. So we did that and it was wonderful. So I enjoyed part time
Yeah.
because it gave me a little bit more of the flexibility that I needed, especially with my husband,
Yeah.
traveling for work. But at the root, I think I always was an entrepreneur. And, people
Yeah.
will ask that. And I always, that's like a great conversation for another day.
Yeah.
Are you born with the DNA to be an entrepreneur? Because I didn't grow up around entrepreneurs. I'm the
Really?
first one in my family.
Yeah.
But honestly, I was the girl that was selling the wrapping paper door to door in 5th grade. And I even started a little Avon business when I was in high
You know,
school. And
I
I
mean,
had
the
no
blend,
business
you look
selling
at those,
cosmetics.
you look at the circles of like clearly sales and marketing, right? And then
Yes.
entrepreneurship, and you look back, and it's like you always say, like, you can't look forward and know where you're headed. But if you look back, you're like, oh, that makes complete sense
Yeah.
where I am now. That's funny.
Yeah. There was definitely
Yeah.
a pattern there. Right.
Yeah.
And I think I just was enamored with the idea of it would be my own thing. I
Mhm.
liked the franchise model because you can hit the ground with kind of a blueprint, which
Mhm.
is what I help
Mhm.
people do today, independent
Yes.
retailers do today. And it was something that, but once again, sales and marketing. I
Mhm.
liked the
Yeah.
niche of it. I
Yeah.
liked the idea of the product. I liked the
Mhm.
idea that my kids could come to work with me. And so that's why I did that.
I love that. Okay. So you jumped into this not having known how to bake at all, or not being a baker, I should say.
I had never even owned a business.
So can you, and now I know it's been 20, you ran that for 20 years, but what were some of the biggest ahas, if you can take me back to that, like going from the security of a job, pros and cons of making that shift then to clearly, like you said, well, I'll just let you, what were some of the pros and cons making that shift for those that are like, I'm thinking about, I'm at the same place you were 24 years ago.
Yeah. Well, I think for us, I can remember the day that, let me back up a little bit, that I went from full-time to part-time.
Yeah.
And my husband and I sat down and looked at the budget and did all that. And I can remember clearly we were going to have 38 cents extra a month after I went part-time because I lost my company car. I lost a lot of the
Yeah.
benefits. But for some reason, it worked out better than that.
Mhm.
So I think I'm just that. I'm a quick start. I'm a fast adapter. I'm a
Mhm.
jump in and we're going to learn as we go kind of a person.
Mhm.
And because I had that confidence of, oh, it worked out fine when we went part-time.
Yeah.
So leaving corporate was easier for me just because I knew if I stayed, we'd either have to keep moving or
Yeah.
we'd always be in another town away from grandparents. And I really wanted my future,
Yeah.
all my children to be around. So when I decided to make the decision to move back to Michigan and open up Cookies by Design, I found out I was pregnant with my second daughter. Well, I'd already signed on the dotted line and I'm like,
Like,
okay, quick start. We
here we
got
go.
this. Here we go. Well, I had no idea what it was going to take because it's a full-fledged bakery. I mean, we were cracking eggs. It was a
Oh
really
my
good product.
goodness.
So
Did
I
they
literally,
train you on baking like
oh
that? Did you?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
we learned all that. But I immediately hired people and we literally opened our doors and 2 days later I delivered my second daughter.
I mean, you couldn't plan it. You
No,
literally could not have planned it
nor would
any
I. I
worse.
mean,
Like basically.
absolutely ridiculous. I mean, she came early, which, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Because she's like, let me get out of this stressed out mom here.
Mhm.
And my husband picked me up from the hospital, and we had cookie bouquets in the back of the car
Oh
that
my
we had to
goodness.
deliver. And then I got up the next morning and took her with me and went into my business.
Okay, pause there for a second because I sometimes say in the moment it feels really, really hard. But also you're just doing it. You're like, I just got to do it. But then looking back, at least for me, so I've had some of those moments too. And I'm like, I didn't give myself enough credit for how hard that was. Like sharing that story, everyone listening to me like, how? How? Like you're like, I was in the hospital for 4 days. I had a C-section, but like I can't imagine 2 days. Like I would have still been delivering, but you just do in the moment where you like, I'm grinding it out right now, or you're like, it's just what you got to do. It's just another day.
Yeah, I don't think you can give yourself the permission to think about what you're doing when
Yeah.
you're in that moment
Yeah.
because you would break down. And
Yeah.
and I did have a couple, obviously I had a couple moments. I mean, I can remember one vividly where I locked myself in the bathroom and just
Yeah.
cried, like, what
Yeah.
the heck did I do?
Yeah.
But, you know, when you get through the other side of it
Yeah.
and have the gift to look backwards, my husband and I joke that if we can get through that, our marriage will survive anything. And we're
Yeah.
been married 33 years. And
Congratulations.
thank you. And also, you just look at the lessons that my kids have learned from hearing that
Yeah.
story. They were too little at the time, but
Yeah.
I will say that probably the biggest legacy that I have created with my entrepreneurship is the lessons that my children have learned by watching.
Yeah. I love that.
Perseverance, grit, community, problem solving, the list goes on. And those are things that are hard to sit and teach around a dinner
Mm-mm.
table.
Mm-mm.
And so to me, that's probably what I'm really proud of. And I will tell you too, it really helped me probably be more a successful business owner because
Yeah.
typical business owners start their business and do everything themselves. And they get stuck in the four walls,
Mm-hmm.
which is why 1 out of 2 fail before year 5.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I always say they don't usually fail, they quit because they're tired and burned out.
Yeah.
Where I surrounded myself with a team. I had to have a baker,
So
I had to
key.
have a decorator, and eventually I was able to get a manager. So then I went out and did what I loved, which was the sales and marketing. It gave me that gift.
Mm.
If I hadn't had a baby and started a business, would I have done it that way? Probably not.
No, it's so key. I love that too, because as you're thinking about scaling, oftentimes, and again, there's a lot of amazing ideas with entrepreneurs, but I think about that too. And you can call it a time audit. You can call it just looking at what gives you energy or not. And we talked about that a little bit already, but that is the fastest way to burn out, is if you're dragged down in the stuff that either you're not good at, you hate doing, it's the last thing on your list, or you leave it to the last thing, but it's stuff that needs to get done. So it's like doing that audit as you're looking to scale of like, what's the first thing I can outsource or automate to? So you're absolutely right. But learning that when you're used to doing it all and you've bootstrapped and you're like, it's almost a little bit like, it feels like you're saying you can't do it. When you're like proud as an entrepreneur and as a business owner and you're like, I can't do it. And that's not it. It's like, how can I do more of what I'm amazing at by
Right.
letting other people take it? So.
Brought my daughter to work. In fact, I still have a few clients that would say, oh, I remember coming into your shop and you had a little baby on your front carrier. Cause that was my daughter was with me all the time.
The biggest, I think, shift for me leaving or allowing me to leave corporate, I had such a different identity. Like it was work and like, don't even have kids. Like it was, and then it was home and it was COVID, which talk about giving yourself grace, but you're in it. And I had Sid, my youngest was 2 and my middle was in kindergarten and they were home. And then my oldest was in 4th. So it was like homeschool 2 of them. And she was running around. And it was this clash of like, I can't have it separate. And because she'd come in the meetings and I try to ignore her and still present and that didn't work. But then it was like, it forced me to be like, what is my whole life and what do I want? Like, I don't want them separate. How do I bring it together? And that was, I think, the straw, not just from a stress standpoint, which it was. And again, not giving myself enough credit, but like, how do I bring all this together and have a life that isn't stressful if I have a kid at home, or, kind of how to weave that into, and it can happen at corporate too. Certainly some people have it, but for me, it was like, and seeing what you're doing and everything. So anyways.
Yeah.
Yes,
Well, I think that's the beauty of entrepreneurship is business and personal do intertwine.
I totally agree. Okay. Then, so you ran your bakery for 20 years, you said, right? You had that. What was your decision? Why did you then decide, you know what, this is the good time for me to leave that and move on to what's next for me?
Well, I had built the cookie brand, I had built the cupcake brand, and it's interesting. I sold in 2018 and I had it for 20 years. And I think you just get to a point where you're like, okay, I don't know if I have any more innovative ideas for this business,
Yeah.
but I sure do have a lot for other people's businesses. And I had a great manager who went to school in the culinary and wanted to own it. So, I was going to bless her with that, making it her dream.
Yeah.
And the reality of it also was the labor market was tough before COVID.
Yeah.
I know everybody says everybody got out of working, in those retail, entry level jobs. Well, it was happening before that. I used to years ago would put an ad in the local colleges and I would have a plethora of people I could interview, really good, strong people.
Wanted to be there. Yeah.
Who wanted to be there, loved it, needed to work. And that started to change. There was a shift. And, I think there's lots of reasons why the younger, high school, college population are not working like they used to or in different ways.
Yes.
And so I got kind of frustrated with that. I was getting a little burned out and it was just time. And I mentored my manager. She bought it from me. I stuck around for a year after to help her. And then COVID happened. So for the grace of God, thank goodness I got out of it because I know I would not have had the energy to pivot through COVID like she did. She had to really bootstrap it to weather COVID, which she did. But the timing was just right. And I knew it.
Did you know then? So when you left, did you know what you were going to do next? You're like, let me take some time just to kind of be. And at that point, you had kids in college, right?
I had,
or were they at home still?
I had one at home, probably like a freshman in high school. I had a daughter in college and I had one who was going to be getting married the following year.
Wow.
So I took some time, and when COVID happened, it kind of opened my eyes to the world of online businesses.
Yeah.
Because I've always been in the world of local business.
Yeah.
And, when you own a business for 20 years, I always mentored people anyway. That was just kind of natural.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know what? I have a skill set that can help these people, especially when COVID happened. I weathered a recession. I have a skill set that can really help locally owned businesses. So I work with brick and mortar. These are your typical businesses where the customer comes to them, but I also work with service based. So these are businesses where they go to the client in their market. But the common denominator is how do we grow our market without spending a lot of money on Facebook ads? And
Yeah.
so I really focus on how do we position you in your community so you become instantly referable.
I
And
love
there's a
that.
strategy to that. There's steps to that. And when COVID was happening and they were, having to close their doors, and that's when I decided I was going to jump in and do this. But what I love about what I do is I work with one-on-one with clients all over the country, but I get to dictate
Yeah.
when and how. And I get to spend Wednesdays with my granddaughter.
Well, I want to make sure we can end where people know how to reach you. But one last question I do have for you is you talk about helping people kind of differentiate themselves when they are brick and mortar or service based with this proliferation of like online. And there's a whole new way to look at that. And I love that because, and I want to ask you too, what are some of the, if you just have some of the common ways that people can think about that? Because I know for me as a consumer, the ease of, the Amazons or the big, that are everywhere is great. It's the Starbucks, but I love finding a local coffee shop that's so different, that's differentiated in my area, or like this little gift shop where you can go or maybe like work there and like the vibe and the energy, or even a service based getting to know the person that's like that I'm talking, because I'm such a like I want to know the person I'm working with. So I know as a consumer it's in there, but how do you work with businesses? Like what are some of the things that like that you've seen common that they can start trying to work through or implement?
Well, the first of all, it is challenging. They are competing with online and still trying to make a profit. They're trying to be found, and they're also, trying to attract customers into their business versus the ease of, like what you said, online shopping. But there's a lot of people out there that want to support their communities because 68 cents of every dollar you spend in your community
Mhm.
stays in your community. That's pretty powerful.
Yeah. I
And
love
the
it.
younger generation too are tired of seeing the cardboard boxes. There's less sustainability. But what you really have to do is be known for something.
Mm.
And there's this fear out there when you're an entrepreneur that you try to please the masses. I loved this quote that said, quit trying to be everybody's cup of tea, just be somebody's shot of whiskey.
Oh my God, I love that.
And
Actually,
so,
I need that. I need you to tell me that all the time.
yes,
Exactly. Yes.
we all do. And
Yeah.
there's a fear there because
Yeah.
we think more people we talk to, the more our business will grow. But the opposite is true. So if you're in insurance, for instance,
Mhm.
and you're competing with Progressive, pick a lane that you can be so
Yeah.
well known for and be the expert in, so that I call it the face test, that when somebody says, oh, I have a rental property, and somebody goes, oh, I know Joe who specializes in rental property insurance. Let me give you his contact. So we need to strive to be that
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
And in order to be that person, you have to lead with your expertise, pick something,
Hmm.
whether it's an industry or something about your industry. Like, for instance, I work with a dog bakery. She owns a bakery and a pet supplies, super cute.
Yeah.
And she said to me, she goes, one of my frustrations, she's in a thriving spot with apartments above her, and she sees Chewy's boxes every day, but she's teaching people how to play with their dog. Okay, so that's a
Mm-hmm.
resource. That's not a resource for everybody.
Mm.
But if I've got a dog that's driving me nuts, I'm going to remember
Yeah.
that she's got some tips.
I
So
like that.
that's how you have to start building those connections and those
Mhm.
relationships. But then you really have to network, and it's about creating strategic partners that can
Yeah.
refer you,
Yeah.
because it will grow and it
Yeah.
works. And I see it work.
I
And
love, sorry to interrupt, but I love that because I feel like just thinking as, again, as like you're coaching me as a business, one, it releases me to try and be everything to everyone. Like it actually takes a little bit of the weight off my shoulders where I can like be really good at like something, and
yes,
that it feels good. But also if I know that path and like, this is the thing, like using back to the woman who has the dog bakery and the services, like you kind of, I am an action person. Like, what are the steps? And that kind of is, now I know the steps I need to do. I need to double down on this. I need to create these XYZ services because this is exactly what this one person I'm delivering to needs. And so both of those, it gives me excitement and hope and like a clear path forward in that path.
it does. And it's going to save you a ton of time because you're not going to be networking everywhere. You're going to go network where
Yep.
the person who is playing with their dog is hanging out. And the other thing too, it saves you a lot of money. One of my clients had 62 products. we narrowed it down to 12 and her sales have skyrocketed.
Amazing. Yeah.
Most people wouldn't think like that.
No.
But, these are strategies that are hard to get your mind around. And that's why it's really crucial to bring someone in that can kind of help guide you through that.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you can't sell to other people. You will naturally sell to other people. And that's where the fear comes in. We have to let go of that fear. Just because you're choosing a lane to, let's say, the insurance person with the rental doesn't mean he's not helping other people with their home and auto. He is.
Yeah.
But he's getting found by his one area of expertise.
I love that. And that's what I think honestly, besides the functional and hard skill sets that a coach like yourself brings, is it's such a mindset. I mean, you're in it a lot of times on your own, even if you have people working for you, you're not like strategizing with them. But all the stuff you talk about too is there's this fear of like, am I doing this? Am I making this decision right? I'm giving this up. I need to have this, whatever it may, it's a lot of mindset stuff. So to have somebody who's been there before and done it, but also can kind of hold your hand through it, I feel like that's like the most valuable part of it as well. So I love all the tidbits you said. And then actually, when we were beginning to talk, I was like, I'm going to, so many things I can learn from you, from the leaving corporate, starting entrepreneurship, and a lot of our listeners. But honestly, even working with businesses, I can take it as an individual too. Some of that stuff like that anybody's trying to do, even in a corporate job, like if you're trying to be everything to everyone, you're taking on way too much and burn yourself out in the process. I mean, you could put those lessons in any aspect.
Any aspect. Right.
So, Jennifer, thank you so much. So, if anybody listening is a service-based or a locally owned business, is like, that's exactly what I need, where can they find you and how can they reach out to you?
Best place is my website, Next Wave Business Coaching. And there's lots of free resources, lots of tips and training and webinars and all that. And then also on LinkedIn, Jennifer Owens Kok, it's K-O-K. And I'm on LinkedIn every day, and just DM me and tell me you heard me on this podcast and would love to have a conversation. I do offer a free 30-minute strategy session for anyone who's feeling stuck. So happy to help wherever I can.
That's great. And I mean, you can probably tell from this podcast alone that 30 minutes, you'll get a lot of amazing nuggets. So thank you. I will put all that in the show notes so anybody listening can find you. And thank you for your time and just sharing your story. There's so many lessons in there.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And I love what you're doing. And until next time.
I appreciate you. Thank you.